training, professional training, real-world experience. But that's not enough. The third leg of the program is embodying today's symposium, and that is providing a platform that's unique for the scholarly and legal and policy analysis about the laws that affect entrepreneurs. And so this program today, which you are all participating in, and we have a very large number of people throughout the day who will be participating, is really a culmination of something that's personally very near and dear to my heart, but also very important not just for Brooklyn Law School and the Brooklyn community, but I believe as a model for Brooklyn for legal education throughout the United States and abroad. We're really particularly pleased to have so many people on the webcast and participating on our panels and in the audience from overseas. I particularly commend Professor Jonathan Askin, who really first conceived of CUBE. And it's so important that Jonathan dressed up today.
I am the referee.
Oh, there you are, right there. Yeah, right. So today he's uncharacteristically formal, but he somehow seamlessly managed to pass from the uptight, button-down, business world that he travels in into the entrepreneurial world. But thank you for especially your really unique outreach abroad, particularly in Europe. And so with that, I wish you all the best today. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your participation. I'll be popping in and out. I'm going to be chopping prices the rest of the day, so I have hard work ahead of me. And at this point, I'll ask the tremendously experienced and steady Executive Director of CUBE, Paul Gangsei, to come forward. Paul?
Good morning. It's always a pleasure to follow Dean Allard at the podium because I don't have to give my speech. Nick has adequately and eloquently, I think, explained the source of CUBE. I will second the fact that this Center for Urban Business Entrepreneurship is the brainchild of both Jonathan Askin and Dean Nick Allard, and I can assure you that is a very powerful combination. I'm pleased to have the responsibility and the privilege of leading the effort, and I see it as really having two parts to this mission. One is to train our students to participate in the entrepreneurial economy, both as players and as seasoned advisors. And the second is to enhance the law school's role as a resource, and that's really exemplified by the symposium that we have today. So I'm delighted on behalf of CUBE to welcome you here. I wish I could claim to have thought of the Bleak House to Geek House name, but that also goes to my colleague, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the symposium. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Paul. Well, I think I first have to explain my attire. By the way, I'm Jonathan Askin. I am the director of the Brooklyn Law Incubator and Policy Clinic, and I teach here at Brooklyn Law School. This was a calculated move. Nick, I think, rightly pointed out that I don't necessarily dress like your average lawyer or entrepreneur, but this is my uniform today. I am wearing underneath my Blip Legal Hackathon uniform, and above it I'm wearing a Brooklyn-made referee's jersey, is the way I'm treating it, because my goal today is to serve as a somewhat bit of a referee, which means I hope it gets a little contentious. I don't know if this is the panel that will get contentious, but I hope things get a little contentious. We have a, by the way, this is, since we're semi-tech innovation oriented, please feel free to use your laptops or your phones. Feel free to tweet. If you can't get access to the Wi-Fi information is at the desk. Does anyone not have access to the Wi-Fi who needs it? Good, all right. We've got our Twitter back channel right here, so feel free to use the hashtag BrookLawGeek for comments on the event. I have to thank Jolie and the Internet Society and Legal Hackers for streaming this event. Thanks a lot, Jolie. So this is live streamed now, and we will chop it up for posterity, and each of the panels, demos, workshops will be available for posterity on both the Internet Society site and the Legal Hackers site. Right, Phil? Legal Hackers too? Good. All right. So we have a very broad agenda for today, and when we first thought about this conference, and by the way, you should know, we completely oversubscribed. You could look around the room and think, where are all the people? Maybe it's because it's New York. People don't get up until 10 o'clock. I'm not sure what it is, but we have we've accommodated 300 people today. And in fact, I didn't tell folks until yesterday that we were streaming this event. So we will get a full house as the day progresses. But we have a very broad set of topics for today and a very broad flow for the day. This is not supposed to be a straight symposium. And when I talked to some of my colleagues several months ago, I think they had some concerns because we didn't have a set agenda, because we didn't have a rigorous structure and papers. But to me, that's not the nature of what being an entrepreneurial lawyer should be about. I talk to my students about us trying to always be able to pivot, like the startups we represent. Always being in perpetual beta, like the best of the startups we represent. So I'm hoping that today is very much also in a constant state of flux and perpetual beta. Has anyone ever read the book, Where Good Ideas Come From? We got at least one. It's a book written by Brooklyn's own Stephen Johnson, who started a company down the hill called Outside In, sold a few years ago to AOL. AOL didn't know what to do with it and sort of mothballed it. But Stephen has really been a great visionary, and his focus, he's written a lot of great books now, but in Where Good Ideas Come From, he talked about the concept of the adjacent possible. And I think that may mean different things to different people, but I think it's a concept, a phrase that's going to grow in momentum and import as the years progress. So to me, the adjacent possible is the conception that you don't know what the future is going to look like. You don't know what ventures are going to evolve, what great ideas are going to evolve. But they're going to evolve when you get the right people in the room. And that's what I want today to be about, bringing the right people in the room together. That means bringing in lawyers, technologists, innovators, entrepreneurs, other people experimenting with their own professions and interacting with people from other backgrounds. Now, not to too heavily disparage South Dakota, Nebraska, the rest of the country, but there's a reason why great ideas are coming out of Brooklyn. And it's because we've got all the right constituents. We've got the melting pot. We've got people with a wide diversity of backgrounds, all in close proximity to one another. Right here in the Brooklyn Tech Triangle, I think we've got something like 1,000 startups. It's probably more startups per square inch than any place else in the known galaxy. So that's why I think great ideas are coming out of Brooklyn. But lawyers have always been late to the table. Lawyers generally are among the most conservative people in society. And law professors, frankly, often more conservative. We looked for some sense of job security. We didn't want to have to run out and get clients all the time. And, so we're talking about the most conservative of the conservative. Maybe not politically, but to some extent in the way they go about their lives. I don't think that can play anymore. And we're starting with a panel here. When I look at these four folks, I actually look at the revolutionary forefront of legal academia, and Wilfried also, not an academic, but someone who's been exploring ways of using technology to improve the law and legal process. So between the four of them, my goal, I should tell you about this panel specifically. This panel, we didn't know about this panel until about 2 months ago. Again, this conference has been a sort of a beta test. And about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I wrote an article for the National Law Journal in which I largely disparaged America. I talked about how America, for 40 years, really pioneered the concept of experiential legal education, and Europe was a backwater. Europe wasn't training its lawyers to work while in law school to represent the ventures and clients that they might represent when they got out of law school. And that's historically still been the case in America. We train, law school is the one trade school, professional school, where you can graduate from the school and really not know how to practice your profession. But at least in America, the past 40 years, we've improved and we've built out our conception of experiential education, And I think we are now producing lawyers who actually can hit the ground running. America also had, I think, more established business laws and business practices. So it became a bit of a bastion for many decades for businesses. So about 4 years ago, I went to the White House, and they were launching something called Startup America, the Startup America Partnership. Does anyone know about the Startup America Partnership? A few of you. The Startup America Partnership is supposed to be a network around the country in which experienced entrepreneurs, financiers, others are committed to helping support the startups within their own regions. Silicon Valley and New York and Boston and Colorado, Denver, Boulder and Austin, all sort of had a good embedded base of support for their startups. So they were starting to thrive, but there were a lot of other cities and regions around the country that didn't have that. So the vision for Startup America was to build out that expertise around the country so that startups in Nashville could thrive the same way startups in Silicon Valley and New York have. So I pitched to the White House at the time. I said, why don't we add a law firm, a law school component to that? A way in which law students could work with the startups within their own region and work with the startups that otherwise didn't have access to affordable legal support. The White House said, okay, that sounds like a good idea, but I didn't see any movement. Meanwhile, there were wonderful programs, at least one in particular in America, funded by the Kaufman Foundation that Tony Lupino and Esther Barron are connected to. But they weren't connected to the government. They didn't have real bona fide government support. So I took my marbles and I went to Europe. And Europe, under austerity, gave us 500,000 euros to build out this network that I tried to pitch to the White House. So now in Europe, and we've got a representative from our European iLink network of startup law clinics here from the University of London Queen Mary Center for Commercial Law, to talk about what they're doing in Europe. So my thought was, well, now that the European Commission has given funding and acknowledged its need to support the European legal educational community in concert with the European startup community, was going to somehow leapfrog over America. So I think I ruffled a few feathers in America, and Tony, I think, rightly called me on it. And I thought, well, can't we make lemonade out of the lemons here? Can't we try to bring the two networks together, the American legal educational experiential community with the European legal experiential academic community, and see if we can create a network of network, see what we can learn from one another, see if we can create a broad global system where we will share and cooperate. Now, what do law students learn from day one? They learn about competition. They learn you gotta beat your classmate, you've gotta get the client, you've gotta win in court, you've gotta get the A, and if you get the A, someone else gets the B. That's really not been the spirit in, I think, clinical legal education. It's really been one based on a collaborative spirit. And it has not been the spirit in the American startup community. Also one based on the collaborative spirit. Has anyone, who among you have never been to a hackathon? So a lot of you haven't been to a hackathon, all right. Hackathons are places where usually technologists and coders go to try to collectively work together for a weekend and resolve issues collaboratively. What's up, guys? And my students and I would go to these hackathons, and we always felt like wallflowers until the very end of the hackathon. We were the lawyers who had to come in and tell the folks who were hacking cool things that they couldn't do it, or if they wanted to do it, here's how you could do it. But we basically wasted 46 of the 48 hours at the hackathon sitting on the sidelines. We decided we were going to embrace the hacker ethos and try to bring lawyers into the center of the hacker community. So we started running legal hackathons. So the goal there was really to instill in law students, and soon to be lawyers, the spirit of the hacker, the collaborative spirit that you can work quickly, doesn't have to be perfect, but by the end of the weekend you can produce something that's pretty good. And throughout the day we'll see a bunch of different results of various hackathons. Different projects by lawyers and non-lawyers, technologists, non-technologists, who have gotten together and built platforms that either use the law to improve the plight and progress of ventures and entrepreneurs and society, or have used technology to improve the law and legal process. So that, to me, is sort of how we're going to frame the day. And we'll have a bunch of panels, we'll have a bunch of lightning demos, we'll have a lunch workshop. We're going to treat the lunch like we are, in fact, the digital iteration of the Constitutional Convention. We've got VCXC hosting a lunch for us to build a citizens charter for cyberspace. Essentially, we are trying to write the Declaration of Independence for cyberspace and the constitutional provisions on how humans will exist in a digital world. It's going to be an interesting experiment. We may have too many of us to work collaboratively, but I think that's what they probably felt in 1776 when they wrote the Declaration of Independence and in the 1780s when they wrote the Constitution.